One of the greatest mystery mangas ever made was first published in 1999, called 20th Century Boys, a story where the main character has to quit his job at his family's store in order to find and bring to justice someone he once knew, but he doesn't quite know who exactly this person is. This manga was created for a person who can wait for plans to unfold, and better yet, feel excitement when another plan begins to be in the works. After hours upon hours of reading this seinen manga, it caught my eyes that this manga was an experience of heroism, revenge, psychotic nature, childhood bonds, and defeat, all summed up into one thick plot. And ever since then, I knew I had to do a complete essay making sense of it all. My name is King Shadow, and you better hurry up and get some snacks and rush to a cozy spot because this video is about to be a good one. When making sense of a complex series like this, we first have to make the most sense about the complex thing, and that is Friend. A lot of people assume Friend is the end-all be-all antagonist out to get the protagonist in this manga, but even then, he isn't your regular villain. Friend is a person, or persons I should say, that wants more. More as in more power and control over others, and that is the meaning of Friend. Friend leaves many questions for our main character, Kenji, to solve, along with ways of hiding his identity for the sake of Kenji not to solve the puzzle he set out for him. The worst part is, if we're using this puzzle analogy, it's like if Kenji needs to solve a puzzle, but there is missing pieces. Friend is Kenji's worst nightmare come to life, figuratively and literally. The guy makes Kenji constantly think and guess, and even then, the mystery set out on his true identity can't even be cracked. Friend was able to climb the ranks and gain world succession through following the plans inside the Book of Prophecies, but more on that later. Friend achieved great success by this. He became the leader of the Friend cult, leader of the Friendship Party, and became the world president. Not bad for a person who followed a children's book. Friend is one of the children who knew about this book, but Kenji has no idea who really saw this book and flipped through the pages of this book, so it makes the series tough on Kenji on who this person truly is. But Kenji gets a hint when Friend tells Kenji it is truly Kana's father. Kana is Kenji's sister's daughter who was left in his care because both parents are nowhere to be found. What I do like about Friend is how he's depicted. The mangaka made it so that the antagonist is already in power and has a following behind him, and to be honest, Friend already has the antagonist look to him. Throughout the series, we see Friend in a suit and a tie, keeping a professional political stance at all times, with a white shirt on the inside. In the beginning and a few earlier chapters in the manga, they decide to keep Friend's face hidden. I would think this is a way to keep fans engaged and excited for a reveal that never truly happens. However, there is a small moment where we do see a smile or his black hair. The manga only reveals that much to keep Friend's identity to us fans as well hidden. I mean, after all, this is a mystery on who this man truly is and what his true intentions are earlier on. While we're talking about how Friend looks, because it is really important, in chapter 133 we see a sudden change when Friend chooses to wear a Ninja Hattori-kun's mask while wearing his same old suit. I guess Friend was feeling a bit nostalgic, or maybe it's because after the events of the bloody New Year's Eve, his face was damaged badly as confirmed in the series. Friend is known all over for his appearance within the series, and it kinda makes his character sort of iconic. Nevertheless, we know Friend isn't just one person, it is two people. Two as in two different separate entities. But these two share one identity under Friend for the sake of taking over the world and gaining as much control as possible, because after all, that's what Friend wants at the end, which means that our main protagonist will be very confused when he does find this out, or his friend, or his niece. And trust me, if you have read 20th Century Boys, you would be confused because I most definitely was. I honestly thought some type of supernatural event occurred. I honestly thought Friend had a super special ability. But moving forward, those two people I was talking about before, their names are Hattori and Katumata. But first, we gotta talk about Hattori, the first friend and the father of Kana, apparently. It's important to distinguish both men because they both have different ideologies when portraying this friend character. In the late 1960s, Fukubey or Hattori, depending on which name you want to use to call friend number one, snuck into the secret base of Kenji and his friends to read the Book of Prophecy, the original one. Hence why our main character Kenji had a damn hard time finding out which person saw this book, because at the end of the day, Kenji was just a child who couldn't care less about who saw this book. Anyways, while Hattori is trying to sneak in, he meets a masked boy named Sadako, who is extremely important, and I will talk about him much later on. Sadako would go on and ask Fukubey if he could be his friend, and this is exactly where this whole friend word stems from, because Fukubey responds to Sadako and says to never refer to him as Hattori or Fukubey, but rather just call him friend. And from this point on, Fukubey, Sadako, Yamen, and Katumata formed their own little group separate from Kenji's. With this new group formed, they decided to copy the Book of Prophecies because they are children at the end of the day who want to do funny things, and created another version called the New Book of Prophecies. And it starts to go downhill from this point on when each and every one of these children get neglected as they grow up, and that does indeed shape a person's character. Now moving on to the early 1980s, it's just Fukubey and Katsumata, at least when it comes to developing this new friend persona to take over the world. These two boys join two different cults to see how people are influenced and how followers can be used. They do this to understand how they can do it themselves and how to do it effectively. After all, they do need a following to take over the world. But one thing these two did differently was applying their magic to make people believe. And when people believe, people decide to follow. So both of them took advantage of that. One of the most famous ones you've probably seen is Friend floating in the air so others can believe in Friend's supernatural ability. Not only is it revealed that Friend can sort of predict the future, but now he can also fly. Around this time, Kiriko had been manipulated by Friend in order to make a virus and vaccine, and at this point, Kiriko had been pregnant with Kana, and Katsumata would later confirm that he did experiments on Kana while she was still in the womb, with some sort of secret medicine that would give this child some secret abilities. This is done by Katsumata, who seems to be the mastermind, as it's implied that Friend, who is Fukubey, only actually rules over Japan, while all the other acts are committed by Katsumata. Going back to chapter 133, the chapter I had mentioned earlier, Yaman kills Fukubey, the man who thought he was invincible because his death was not a part of the Book of Prophecies. Yaman did this because he felt like he needed to let go of his relationship with Friend, as that was holding him back in life. He even tells himself that he didn't think he could do it, but now it's over. Friend died on January 1st, 2015, and Ocho at this time would confirm the identity of Friend being Fukubey after taking off his mask. One plot hole left in 20th Century Boys, however, was the plans of Fukubey. I mean, if he didn't die, some would speculate after being world president, he would find a way of becoming immortal so he can rule the world forever, or cause more useless damage to society. If you think of all this, it's pretty complex. In the perfect edition of the 21st Century Boys, Fukubey actually died as a child during the spring break in 6th grade, and that Katsumata assumes his identity from the very beginning. So you can see how complex this sort of situation can get. Because now if Fukubey actually did die, that means Katsumata had assumed his identity from the very beginning, meaning that there isn't two friends, there's only one. And there are hints to this. At chapter 172, Fukubey does not escape his strangulation, and in chapter 202's flashbacks, the example project's conversation implies off-screen deaths. In the simulation game as well, Friend manages to pull the child version of Fukubey by the noose while saying that is the truth. perhaps covering up that Fukubey did not possess supernatural abilities. Nevertheless, people, you can see how complex this is. Is there one friend? Is there two friends? And if there's only one friend, who did Yamen shoot in the first place? And if Fukubey did die during his childhood, how did Ocho realize that was Fukubey? You can see just how confusing this can really get, so bear with me for a bit. This is also explored in the live action films as well, though it is unclear if Urasawa intended this to be the definitive ending from the start. This whole mix-up between Fukubey and Katumata has to be one of the most confusing things I've seen in seinen, but there seems to be many theories online. One theory online suggests if you hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my YouTube channel, you will get me closer to my goals of becoming a full-time YouTuber. In all seriousness, please do, it helps out the channel a lot. Nevertheless, some believe that Fukubey really did die in 1971, but we don't know for sure. A lot of this stuff really does get confusing, so that's why the mangaka Urasawa created 21st Century Boys to clear up a lot of plot holes essentially. Now we gotta move on to Dissecting Katumata, friend number 2, or maybe friend number 1, who was also a former member of Kenji's classroom mates and takes part in the post-takeover rule of friend. He becomes the next friend as the first friend rises from the dead, but it really isn't the first friend because Fukubey is apparently dead, or that's who we think Fukubey is. He did this under circumstances to prove that he has more up his sleeves than anybody else can assume, because Friend did indeed come back to life, and if Friend can come back to life, a lot of people will follow, because in the world of the 20th Century Boys, people with power have control. It almost seems as if Fukubei's death did indeed help the figure of Friend become more powerful, although friend number 2 takes more of a drastic approach than his predecessor and plans to wipe away mankind with bombs and viruses. Katsumata is also like Fukubei in a sense. Both men were bullied as children and were shunned away by other kids, the kids they wanted to become friends with. Just like Fukubei, Katsumata became inferior to others and decided to breed hatred into his heart. Because of this, his hatred towards humanity. This damage was even further when Kenji stole a prize from a local candy shop and blamed Katsumata. This resulted in the owner of the store to shun Katsumata in front of everybody, slowly breaking down his character. And one of the most complex things that would happen from this point on, and of course it has to do with Fukubei, and he forces Katsumata to die as a child. And he did this so people can forget about him. And it actually works. A lot of people forget about Katsumata's existence. Fukubei would actually heavily bully Katsumata in order to exploit him. And there is even a theory that Fukubei made Katsumata do plastic surgery so he can be a body double. But that's if Fukubei escaped the 1971 strangulation, then this theory would only be valid. Regardless, other than that, if Fukubei did actually die, that means Katsumata did not just take on the identity of Friend, but he took on the identity of Fukubei as well, doing surgery. And the person that Yamen shot was actually a body double of Katsumata, who is a body double of Fukubei, if that makes sense. And that kind of explains why Ocho thought the face under the mask appeared to be Fukubei. So, I know a lot of you guys are asking, if Fukubei did die in 1971 and Katsumata was Friend all along, then who is that other person that first died and Katsumata took over his place? And like I said, there has to be body doubles. Friend was really smart enough to not leave himself that open to get shot. I mean, him by himself without no security guards or any of his backup in a classroom seems really suspicious. So I think that him dying was actually on purpose so he can better his position. And we obviously see him come back to life and save the Pope, but I will talk about that much later on. And just a reminder, Friend is powerful and rich, and he's probably used a decoy. We already know from 21st Century Boys that Katsumata can see the past, so this might just be possible. But everyone believes that Friend is a different person. Kenji believes one thing, so does his sister, and so does Kana. The point being made here is that friend is an ideology. Friend is the opposite of what Fukubey and Katumata were to each other. Friend is made up of a depressing childhood of children who wanted control over stuff that made them feel better about the situation they were in. Friend is a symbol of the 20th century boys because it's used to depict the cruelty of children and the far length they are willing to go in order to be set free. Set free from the burden of their childhood, of being neglected. Whew, that was a lot to take in, so bear with me. Now that we've made sense of Friend and both masterminds, we have to take a look at the Book of Prophecies. We already know that Kenji and his friends made it when they were kids and hid it in their secret hideout, but the events written in the books come to life many years later after it's written. The first book states that at the end of the 20th century, there will be an evil organization plotting for world domination, and which would come to pass. The second prophecy comes when San Francisco and London are bombarded with biological weapons, and then these weapons spread germs all the way to Osaka. Then after that, the explosion of Haneda Airport, and lastly is the atomic-powered robot that comes through on December 31st, 2000, that has come to destroy all of humanity, but this robot will be up against 9 brave warriors. After Kenji and his friends realize that this cult leader Friend is using their book against them, they know that the final straw is the robot. Except it isn't, because this new Book of Prophecies, they have no idea even exists. Fukubey believed he could make a better story than Kenji and his friends, and that's why he did it. And they do end up using the book to complete their world domination, or at least try to. And we really can't mention the Book of Prophecies without talking about our main protagonist for the first half of the story and shortly in the second half, a man that goes by the name Kenji Endo. This person has to be one of the best protagonists I've had the opportunity to read about. Kenji's personality really shines in a world full of propaganda and hatred. Kenji goes out of his way to find Friend, even though he doesn't need to. He has other priorities such as taking care of his niece and his mother and the family business. But even then, Kenji knows that he must stop Friend because he feels partially guilty and it's his fault that all this chaos is happening in Japan. He feels guilty because he's the one that came up with this concept to create this stupid, childish book, and he's watching a lot of people's lives get terrorized because of this. Kenji doesn't say it out loud, but he does feel guilty by sending people to their death because someone wants to use his plan and his idea to harm others, and he knew it was a simple joke that they were making in a book, but now he has to stop a person and put an end to them because that's what a good person does. And that's exactly what a good friend does. Kenji would gather his group of childhood friends to stop this mastermind that they do not know of, and comes very close of defeating Friend on the bloody New Year's Eve, but causes Kenji to die, temporarily at least. Speaking of the bloody New Year's Eve, I believe now is a good time to talk about it. This attack on New Year's Eve by this part is the last installment of the Book of Prophecies, a prophesized event that caused a government building to blow up that led to 32 deaths and 91 injuries. The attack was made to strengthen the Friendship Democratic Party and to leave them in a position where they gain leverage on the weak people of Japan. Following this terrible bombing and killing of innocent people for political gains, Kenji and his friends were the ones who were blamed and not Friend who orchestrated this plan, and was one of the only people who was hailed the hero in this situation. Friend has the capability of sacrificing innocent people so it can benefit him, and it really shows you the length that Friend is willing to go to stay on top and destroy his enemies, Kenji included, whether those are his old past ones or political party enemies. See, Friend's plan was smarter than we all thought. At least that's what I think, because he did outsmart Kenji. See, Kenji believed that it was Friend's idea to let a virus spill out and let the giant robot attack destroy Tokyo. but he forgot to think about why Friend would do this in the first place. The intention was to create what seems to be a terrorist attack, to put blame on Kenji and his friends. That way people going forward will distrust them and assume the worst, and that's exactly what Friend wants. For him to be portrayed as the man that saved the world, and Kenji's friend group to be portrayed as the people who wanted to kill the world. It's funny because he essentially wants to rewrite history. Kenji's friend group were the best, and his friend group was the worst. But now that he has power and control, he wants to flip the narrative and make people believe. Believe is the reason why Friend is in power in the first place. And by the end of this whole catastrophe, the Friend leader confronts his good friend Kenji after luring him to the robot's control cockpit, and when the dynamite Kenji brought to detonate and put an end to this robot, the effect made it appear as if Kenji was doing all the killings, and decided to self-destruct when the amazing, powerful, heroic Friend came through and saved the day. And from that day onwards, Friend was known as the savior that saved the country because he was at the right place at the right time. And before you know it, Kenji is the worst man known in Japan. And it all begins to crumble for our protagonists. They lose. All hope is lost to us readers at this point. It feels like Friend has essentially won. There is no book secrets of what we know of, nor do we know the identity of Friend at this point, and even worse, Kenji is dead. It's hard to believe that such an event even happened in the span of a couple chapters, but it was one of the best sequences of events I've seen in a seinen manga. While reading this part of the manga, I would lay in bed and read away chapters upon chapters and try to predict what would happen in the next chapter, which would lead me to reading the next chapter to find out, and the cycle would repeat. But with the New Year's Eve over and our characters losing the first part of the series, similarly to Avengers Infinity War, we move on to the second half of the series and we meet our second protagonist who is all grown up again, and that is the daughter of Friend, Kana Endo. She appears in the year 1997, 2000, 2014, and lastly 2018. After the years of the tragic event that cost Kenji's life, Kana has forced herself to take on the role of being the leader, the next succession towards Kenji's goal to take down Friend, who she doesn't know is her father, not yet at least. Kana is literally just like her uncle Kenji. She does not back down when she believes something is right, although before this she worked at a Chinese restaurant and often got in between issues with the Chinese and Thai mafia. She works the job for a while, then decides to quit after a series of following clues that make it seem that Friend will assassinate the Pope and will be hailed the new leader of the world, which she knows cannot happen under her watch. Kana knows that all of Kenji's friends are quite old at this time, so she knows they can't fight the battle anymore, so she turns to the Chinese and Thai mafia. I will also like to note at this time, both of these mobs have been at war for a very long time, but Kana has hopes that if they align both mafias towards her goal, they will be able to protect the Pope. Kana at this time is reconnected with Ocho, and they both go to Friend's funeral where the Pope is supposed to be killed. Now, Friend dying has to be one of the most strategic things that Friend can truly do, because he has all his enemies exactly where he wants them, and none of them know what he can do. And what Friend says does come to pass. Number 13, who is a devoted Friend cult member, takes the shot and kills the Pope, essentially. However, just like always, it's a double plan. That's what at least I call it. Friend comes back to life to save the Pope, which he does, and he is now seen as a new world leader that has come back alive. The Pope even praises him, and so does the whole world. Friend at this point has accomplished his goal. Everybody loves him, and he has them under control. In the third year of Friend, which seems to be like the final act in the series, Friend has taken over the world and completed his goals. But Kana has not given up after all those years after her defeat. She is consistently reminded of Kenji, who had never given up, nor had the mentality to quit, and she idolizes her uncle, which literally makes her want to be like him and never give up. Kana would then lead a rebel faction where people call her the Ice Queen, and she plans a final push against Friend, but Ocho finds her once again where he believes that if Kana sends her people to attack Friend as a final push, a lot of people will die, something that Kenji wouldn't have wanted. Thankfully, Kana does realize this and calls off the attack at the end, and this leads us towards the final chapters with Kenji and Kana. Both characters reunited at the end. Kenji now wears glasses and plays his guitar in the era of Friend, who makes people believe aliens are coming to exile those who aren't vaccinated from the virus. Kenji would then go under a different name, a person named Yabuki Joe, which means he actually did not die in the bloody New Year's Eve but survived the explosion. It was revealed after the events he suffered amnesia and wandered throughout Japan, only to regain his memories at the end of 2015. In the end, Kenji does end up stopping Friend in a final confrontation with him, and Sadako eventually pops out of nowhere and holds Friend at knife point in order to stop him from killing people with his UFO. But even then, Kenji is able to show sympathy towards Sadako, who is acting out of rage, just like Friend did. Kenji tells Sadako to put down the knife and says to Sadako, "Let's end this." And just as things were about to de-escalate, number 13 crashes his helicopter into a saucer ship, which lands directly on Sadako and Katumata, which kills Friend on the spot. It's kind of crazy that Sadako really didn't play much of a bigger role in parts of the series, but at the end, he was injured beside a Friend. Luckily, he did not die. I really don't know if he truly was going to kill Friend after his weird toxic attachment issues to him, but unfortunately he did get hurt because of that. We've looked at Fukubey, Katumata, but now it's the perfect time in this video to talk about Sadako and how he ended up becoming who he is. Sadako is also one of the members of Fukubei's friend group that didn't turn out quite like the rest because they felt like the whole world hated them. Sadako is a very shy classmate who had an obsession with aliens at a young age. At first, Kenji thought it would be Sadako that ended up being Friend because of the similarities of both of them with their hidden identities. And Kenji isn't wrong of assuming that Sadako was Friend because he would always wear the ninja Hattori-kun's mask when he was little, which is a Japanese manga serialized between 1964 and 1998. Ah yes, a cool Easter egg. Nevertheless though, Sadako, unfortunately, like many of our antagonists or protagonists, depending how you look at Sadako, wanted to be accepted very badly into society, and had friends that can play games with him and have fun with. And for Sadako, he took a liking for Kenji, but his self-isolation made it very difficult to be friends with him. And because of his self-isolation, he was easy to get picked on. Many would shove, kick, and punch Sadako because he would do nothing about it. His only safe place was on top of the school, where he would enjoy the idea of aliens coming down to Earth and communicating with him. That way he can leave this Earth. As I mentioned before, one of Sadako's only friends was Fukubey, who became very toxic towards him and would abuse their friendship in order to manipulate Sadako to do many things. But Sadako in his mind felt like he had no choice because he had no other friends, but wanted one so badly, and that one ended up being Fukubey, which was one of the worst things to happen to Sadako. One of the more interesting things that happened in this series regarding Sadako is when Kenji's sister recalls there not being one, but two Sadakos. While she was sat down reading about microbiology, she happened to see Fukubei's friend group pass her, and when Sadako approached her to ask about the microbiology book, she looked over at the group and realized there was another child wearing a mask that was playing with Fukubei's group. This plot twist makes things more interesting because now readers, like myself, almost feel as if Sadako's name is cleared, but there is some mystery man other than Fukubei who is Friend. Later on in the series, they do confirm that the second Sadako was in fact Katumata. We now have to move on to 2002, where Sadako is approached by a dude named Monchan, who was another classmate of Kenji's. Actually, he found out about the new book of prophecies in 2002, and it was made by Fukubey a long time ago, like I talked about before, that only a little bit amount of people knew about, which is obviously dangerous now that these new books can predict the future. Monchan came to Sadako in 2002 because he knew that Sadako would at least be of some sort of help rather than the rest. And when I mean rest, I mean of Fukubei's depressing childhood group. Even though Sadako hasn't really talked to Friend in a while, he still has that bitter friendship connection with him, and because Friend has so much mental control over Sadako, he refuses to give Monchan any extra information because he doesn't want to betray Fukubei and potentially lose a friend. Now, we move on to 2014, where Sadako is still alive and becomes an English teacher in a high school attended by Kana. It might be a coincidence, but who knows. He doesn't first meet Kana, but rather a girl named Kyoko, who also goes to Kana's school, and also believes that the Bloody New Year's Eve is a cover-up for something else. Nevertheless, she is a rebelling girl just like how Kana truly is. Moving back on topic, Sadako's home ends up being the Friend Museum where he works as the manager and opens up to Kyoko, just like a real friend would. Kyoko breaks the news to Sadako saying that Friend might not actually really be his friend. And before I could even continue on this, Sadako looks insanely sluggish and sad. The mangaka Naoki Urasawa did an incredible job with Sadako's character design. The best part of Sadako's design in my opinion is his eyes. He looks pretty drained always and looks like he has a lot of unnecessary weight on him. I mean, even when Sadako was a child, he always had those eyes, but they seem to get much more tired as he grew up. Sadako is supposed to represent the negative after effects of a toxic, manipulative friendship, and Urasawa nailed that with Sadako's facial expressions as well. He rarely even smiles, and when he does, it just is the right amount of awkwardness because we all know Sadako isn't used to smiling, unfortunately. After their conversation, Sadako decides that he wants to be known as a good person and not be controlled by Friend, so he lets go of their friendship and finally burns down the museum. One of my favorite moments actually happened right after this sequence of events, and this is when Sadako reunites with his old teacher, as that teacher did care about him and his well-being. And this old teacher even kept a photo of Sadako. Sadako does get emotional thinking about his teacher and realizing people do care for him. After this, he gives Kyoko Mo-chan's notes that he did indeed get after killing him and distracts the Dream Navigator so the rest can escape. I really do like this shift in character by Sadako. He's been bullied and taken advantage of all his life in order to help Fukubei and the rest of those in the Friend organization, but those same people do not care about Sadako and wouldn't blink twice if he died. I enjoyed seeing this shift from Sadako being on the fence about his friendship with Friend to now joining the good side where he starts to oppose Friend. After this, we don't hear much about Sadako as she drives off in the distance and never to be seen or heard of again. Well, that's until the third era of Friend when it's revealed that Sadako is alive on the outside of the Tokyo wall and goes by the alias the Masked King. It's more of a wholesome moment where he becomes a caretaker for a group of children who lost their parents in the 2015 virus, obviously caused by Friend, which makes all of us love Sadako even more than we already do. All these children wear an Ultraman mask, similarly how Sadako also used to wear it when he was a child. We first see Sadako and all his adopted children when Maruro, Kiroyan, and his child attempted to go inside of Tokyo to distribute the vaccine made by Kana's mom, but kept on getting bombarded by the Earth Defense Force. They become forced to use the sewer systems when they encounter these masked children. Maruo would end up recognizing Sadako and ask him to join the fight. And as we talked about before, he does show up holding Friend at knife point. And it becomes a full circle moment for Sadako. Putting a knife to Friend symbolizes how he finally gains control over the person who destroyed his childhood. Sadako would then tell Kana about where the switch is for the anti-proton bomb and would successfully contribute to stopping it. And one of the more sadder moments in this story would happen when Sadako's journey would end as he dies peacefully in his sleep. Shortly after, Kenji makes his younger self say goodbye to Sadako, who is moving to a different house in the virtual attraction. Sadako has to be one of my favorite characters in the series. I mean, how can you not love this guy? He grew up knowing nothing about friendship, and just as he formed one, it would be with a very, very psychotic kid. He was pushed around and kept his face hidden for a long time in order to conceal his identity. His childhood trauma and trust issues caused him to spiral downwards into his adult years, where he would become actively disengaged with life, to the point of just checking off days with no purpose. He only ever had a few friends, and all of them treated him so terribly. Although he did get accustomed to these disgusting acts, and that's why he got so attached. He was afraid to let go of friends and afraid to move on, because that's all he really had. His child group friend group were the only friends that he had after all these years. Sadako having a beautiful ending really made me enjoy the series. He had a pretty rough life, but once again, he did not give up on being himself. His lack of love transformed himself into a caring person by looking after all those children who had lost their loved ones. Those children had no one out there to love them, and Sadako knew he had to do something and stepped up. And sure, living inside sewers might not be the best option, but it's sure one of the most safer ones to keep these kids away from friend. Nevertheless, Sadako took care of children because he knew it would break them if they grew up with no love just like he did. So thank you, Sadako. But what we need to talk about next is the god complex of friend that almost killed the entire world. Because throughout my days of reading this manga, I've never seen a character like this starved for attention to the point where they make it their life goal to become the most greatest human to exist and try to play God. Friend is by far one of the most toxic characters I've read, and yes, he's up there with Johan and Griffith. But then again, lots of these seinen antagonists want attention so badly that the only thing they can achieve it is to have control over others. And yeah, I'm looking at you three right now. We first see Friend enter this god complex when he saves the Pope, which is a cover-up because the plan all along fed to others was he was directly going to assassinate the Pope. But the other part of the plan many forgot to mention was the plan was half a lie. There was some religious symbols here. A person who is believed to be deceased is having a funeral, where the Pope comes through and makes a speech. And by the way, this isn't just a minor religious figure. The Pope indeed is the head of a certain religion for billions in this manga's world. When the Pope does indeed get shot, it shows an underlying weakness and insecurity, but fear no more. We see a dead man come back to life like he's the Undertaker and save the day. While saying save the day feels like an understatement, the world was in demise without Friend being around. People in this manga devoted their life to his cause, and to see a man of his status come back to life at his own funeral, and not just that, saving the most influential religious person of their time speaks levels on how Friend is able to manipulate sequences of events to benefit him and only him. See, Friend after the Pope's failed assassination attempt on his part proved himself to be one of the greatest masterminds in this series. Having another person carry out this Friend as a symbol shows you how far people in power will go to attain more control over others, because at this point, just like Friend, they can do sketchy things and still have people on their side. Friend's god complex is born as soon as he saves the Pope. Everybody at this point looks at him as some godlike being now. Can you imagine the type of influence Friend has now? He went to being the leader of a Japanese government party to being hailed the world leader for stopping all these crimes that he himself planned. And we can't forget to mention just how obsessed our Friend is with the past and the book of prophecies. I probably shouldn't say our friend, just Friend. Friend feels the need to heal his past trauma by making sure those who made him feel inferior know that he is killing people because they made a book and had a friend group. I'm not sure out of everything in this universe why Friend chose the books, but if you can tell, he's trying everything in order to be accepted and get back that lost time. And even with the friend symbol, it's an exact copy of Kenji's friend group symbol he made as a child. I also feel as if he was jealous directly at Kenji and how he was able to make friends very quickly and was able to stand up to bullies when he and his friends were attacked. Kenji was everything Friend couldn't be, and that angered him. Knowing that Kenji was caring towards his friend, Friend would despise his childhood friends, and when Kenji stood up for people, Friend would control those around him. Friend tries to be like Kenji, but does it wrong, and it shows you just how corrupt Friend's mind truly is. Friend's God complex stems from this as well, stems from the need to be cared about, because no one cared about Fukubey's friend group, and Friend would always take that personal, and we've seen this in the flashback, when Fukubey lied to people that he was at the expo, but no one cared about him at the end. It kind of showed you that no one cared about Friend. He was nothing to society and he didn't contribute much to Kenji's friend group, hence why he became very psychotic growing up. He wanted attention so bad, and the whole thing started to form a snowball effect and made him turn into a killing, ravenous, god complex character. Now, can we blame Friend for his god complex? I mean, yeah, of course, it stems from his past and he could have acted differently or maybe just talked to Kenji and joined their friend group, but then again, Friend's mind works a little bit different than everybody else's in this series. And when I mean a little bit, this guy literally murders people to control them. As I said before, Friend's god complex is out of hand. How do we go from a child being not loved for to wanting to become a world leader so everybody can care for them? That is literally a god complex, and that shows you just how much attention Friend truly wants. I just can't imagine how desperate one can be that they were not loved and they have to go out to seek other people's validation, and throughout that they have to kill a bunch of people to prove a point to a person they were jealous of in the past. The antagonist for this seinen manga 20th Century Boy is truly something else, and his motives of doing things are truly out of this world. Friend forced people to care about him, first was Sadakiyo, and he made sure people can get attached to him, and did it again at a larger scale, being able to control people's emotions by doing strange propaganda. Everyone loves Friends and wants to be exactly like him, like this masked man. But even Friend knows deep down his connection with his cult followers is built on made-up lies, all in order for him to play God and rule the world, and that stems from him not being loved. So you guys shouldn't be like Friend. Instead, you should hit that subscribe button and help out my channel. Let's try to reach 10k subs by the end of the year. Please help me out. Now that we've covered the events and people that I felt personally that we needed to talk about, I wanted to dive straight into themes of this manga that are very interesting. The first major theme has to be friendship. In 20th Century Boys, friendship is everywhere. From when we get transferred to this VR system, we see childhood friendships. When we go back into the present day, we see people and their friendships with each other. And Friend with his cult followers who are always shouting Friend. You literally cannot go one chapter in the 20th Century Boys without reading some type of dialogue that has Friend inside of it. Friendship makes or breaks a human being in the 20th Century Boys. Look at Kenji. He had a bunch of friends and that drove him towards having a positive adulthood. But then we look at someone like Sadakiyo, who was shunned away by Fukubey and had a negative connotation with friendship because of Fukubey. He felt neglected and drained. If you don't believe me, just look at the face design of Kenji. Now look at Sadakiyo. And you can see that people are influenced by those around them. Bonds and connections with people can literally change the trajectory of our future if we let them control us. Kenji turned out the way he did because he was not neglected, nor did he ever back down when getting bullied, along with having really good friends. But if we look at Fukubey, Sadakiyo, Yamen, and Katumata, all of these children were silent and getting bossed around constantly by Fukubey. Their toxic friendship with each other went all the way into their adulthood and affected everyone in their own ways. Yamen helped create the virus that would kill lots of people in hopes that it would benefit Friend. Fukubey and Katumata would focus on building the identity of Friend, Or it might just be Katumata because Fukubey might have died when he was a child. Nevertheless, Sadako was left out of this friend cult but still had to kill Mon-chan in order to protect friend's identity. It may be safe to say that some friendships can kill you, as it did for some of our main characters. Friendship also is the means of betrayal. What I mean by this is, at first when Kenji finds out that this masked person is using his flag symbol and is using the world domination plan he created, Kenji starts to go to check up on his friends one by one to see if he has any disloyal people that are betraying him and taking advantage of his childhood made up stories he created. It creates this odd tension, but someone like Kenji knows that his friends wouldn't do such a thing. It kinda has an underlying effect to it. Kenji feels like he's being betrayed by his friends, but he knows that they wouldn't do it. The mangaka does this in order to make readers question what it truly means to be a friend to someone. Is a friend a person that you can talk to, or is a friend someone that you can rely on and willing to do anything for? The question this manga secretly asks is what makes a friend a true friend? You can say Fukubey wasn't a good friend to Sadako, but they were still friends based on the connection they had. Sure, it was a negative one, but a friendship nevertheless. I like this theme because it shows you two outcomes that can happen in a friendship. But then again, each friend is different and unique. But unique doesn't always mean good, right, Fukubey? Speaking of friends, he never believed in an equal partnership when it came to two friends. Fukubey believed that there should be a leader and a follower, and that's exactly how he ran his strange friend cult. See, Fukubey would often use his friends for the benefit of himself, because he knew that friendship was a strong foundation for human beings, because we all need to feel connections, and with connections and friendships, friend can control people, which he did successfully. I mean, without Kana, Ocho, Kenji, and a few more others, friend would have succeeded due to friendship. I mean, he pretty much did, but our protagonists were constantly throughout the decades trying to stop him. Although Friend was so good at manipulating people's love and connection towards him, even though he couldn't care less about his followers, he knew just how powerful he'd be if he gave people the opportunity to be his friend. And this is due to Friend being at such a high status in the beginning of 20th Century Boys. And I'm not talking about having cars, money, or jewelry. Friend literally uses his presence on stage so people can gravitate towards him and become his friend and follow him for the sake of friendship. And now, I would like to talk about the symbolism of the mask and cloth mask used in the series. We see it time and time again, almost every chapter, whether we look at the group's childhood or adulthood. And there is always someone with a mask. A mask is the means to conceal an identity, of course. But it also has many connotations in this specific manga, and that is that people are never who they seem. Both Friend and Sadako are key to this. We don't know too much about them looking on the outside, we hardly even see their face in the beginning. And it's kind of crazy because in an article I found by the University of Texas, it states that almost all nonverbal communication has to do with facial expressions. But what happens to communication when we can't even see a person's face? Masks are used in this series to depict the secrecy of a character with their intentions. When a mask is placed on somebody, it's hard to guess what a human is thinking of or even the emotions they're feeling. With that being said, it makes a person's mood feel unpredictable. So you see where I'm going with this? Sadako having Friend at knife point, very unpredictable. Friend coming back alive, very unpredictable. The mask time and time again shows us, the readers, just how powerful someone can be with a mask because their identity being sealed is to manipulate and mask a moment, which Friend is amazing at. The mask in this show also encapsulates the lack of emotion. We cannot see if Friend is happy or sad. He hides it, just like how he hides all his master plans. We never see any protagonist with a mask on because they don't have anything to hide. Whereas Friend must remain hidden in order to execute whatever is on his agenda. or even the mix-up I talked about earlier with the two Sadakos, it goes to show you just how quick masked people are able to slip under the radar and quickly confuse someone, all because their identity is sealed. Now that we've talked about the antagonist long enough, I think it's time we give Kenji some spotlight during the end of this video. See, he is the protagonist after all, and a failed hero. Now, let me explain that part. Kenji isn't your average protagonist where he takes hundreds of chapters straight up fighting an antagonist and getting a buff out of nowhere or even mid-fight. Rather, Kenji disappears after the events of the Bloody New Year's Eve. He doesn't come back with no type of serious revenge in his heart or some odd power he discovered while he was away, but rather he finds himself again and his love for music. A lot of people were confused when this all happened, but I can kind of make sense of this. His love for music is also, like many others, tied back to his childhood, as he fell in love with music when his older sister got him a guitar. He fell in love with music once again during a very hard time in the world because he was connecting back to his younger self. In a world where people's identities are blurred, Kenji is trying to reclaim his own identity. Friend uses media, science, and politics as his weapon to control his mass following, and does it very effectively, and so he does end up ruling the world. But Kenji oddly uses music to sway people away from Friend. It's like if Friend didn't even bother copying that part of Kenji, his love for music. He copied his symbol, his books, and wanted to be like Kenji but couldn't imitate Kenji's love for music. Kenji's music becomes the resistance force for the Friend movement. And at this point, he doesn't fight Friend with his friends this time, as he's kind of all alone in his second run in defeating Friend. Even though his second time around he isn't with his friends, he connects with the people of Japan. Doesn't that kind of sound a bit similar? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Friend. See, Kenji and Friend are kind of parallel to each other. Instead of controlling them like Friend did, Kenji's music is a reminder to the people how life was before Friend took over. So, Kenji doesn't use guns or a serious speech to sway the non-believers, but instead takes down Friend in the way he least expects, by taking his own friends away from him. I mean, without this cult Friend followers following Friend is essentially nothing, and he's going back to being the boy no one ever cared about, rendering him harmless and in no control, which is exactly what Kenji wants. The parallels between Kenji and Friend have to be one of the best things with this series, and I can make a whole nother video talking about this. But first, I want to end this video off with talking about my personal favorite characters that made this read-through of this manga very enjoyable to me. And I repeat, do not get enough credit they deserve because their character writing is amazing. Thank you, Urasawa. First, I have to talk about Choji Ochiai, but some of you guys may know him as Shogun or Ocho. Ah yes, he is the best friend of Kenji and the co-leader of their childhood friend group. I bet you didn't know that Ocho was going to be the one who coined the symbol of friendship, and that was used by Friend and Kenji's friend group. Before the Friend regime took place, Ocho would be a businessman and was seen with very expensive suits. But after his son died, he would go to India and Thailand to train with a monk and lost his clean look. His son's death caused Ocho to lose himself, and we see this through this drastic physical change that the mangaka has so gladly done. And this all happened when he was 27. He went to this monk in order to achieve inner strength and most importantly how to overcome his own despair he had been going through. And in Thailand, he would blow up the Rainbow Kid factory, which produced a drug created by Friend. But before all this, Ocho was just an innocent child who was said to be very intelligent and a really good student, achieving pretty good scores in school. Better than Kenji, that's for sure. Ocho's family seemed also pretty financially well off since he was able to afford to attend the 1970 World Expo in Osaka and was always asked for spare change. While Ocho seemed like the one who brought the group together, he would remain in the background to be right behind Kenji, so he wouldn't be the leader, simply because Ocho didn't want it and he didn't care. Later on, we're introduced to him again under a different alias, Shogun, and this is where we see a simple but different Ocho. He doesn't laugh or smile, and isn't too fond of showing some sort of expression, although he has not lost that heart that he always had. And this is shown when he was saving children and women in danger. He also still feels sympathy for his friends. When he receives that call from his best friend Kenji, he immediately responds to the call for help, because he knows if Kenji is asking, he has to do it because he's a good friend. After the events of the Bloody New Year's Eve, Ocho gets thrown in jail for years for his false crimes, but doesn't talk much about it. Without his friend Kenji, Ocho has nothing left to do but fulfill Kenji's goals of defeating Friend. I'm here to tell you guys, Ocho is one of the best characters. He really stood by Kenji's side, and even when he got thrown into jail, he never gave up. He was always finding different ways to get out to finally bring Friend to justice. Now, I want to mention another person who deserves recognition, and that is Kirutaru, who is referred to as God, even though he is human. Kirutaru is a homeless man who lives a poor life with extremely future-seeing abilities that happen to activate only in his sleep. He was also the one responsible for the destruction of the secret base in order to build his bowling alley in the 1970s. But everything comes crashing down while he's older and lives a humble life now. He is important to the story because he drops clues on what Kenji and his friends should look out for in the future, although he refuses to elaborate on them. He also has a strong sense of loyalty as he remains loyal to Kenji and his friend groups after the Bloody New Year's Eve event, even when he only met them for a brief time. He's also a man of his words, seeing as he did take care of Kana when Kenji entrusted her to him. He has an undying passion for bowling as well, and seemingly only gets excitement because of that. As an adult, my boy is a very persistent businessman. He also is loud and inquiring. I personally feel like he's an unappreciated character. Even though the old dude didn't really have much time on the manga pages, he was still well written and one of those characters where even though they show up a lot less frequently than others, it's still a good time to read their dialogue. If you guys made it all the way to the end of this video, I do appreciate it a lot, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. My goal is to be a full-time YouTuber, and if you enjoyed this quality content, please subscribe. And if you want to talk to me and others who support me, I do have a Discord community which will be linked in the description for those who want to come and say hello. And lastly, I do have a Patreon where I release videos early, and you do get a shout out in my vids if you join. Once again, thank you guys for watching my video, and don't forget to subscribe. Peace.